Welcome back everybody to another episode of JRPG Journal, and today I wanted to talk about my first experience with the Tales series, and that was with Tales of the Abyss on PS2. Now, I was definitely around for Tales of Destiny, and I remember watching my friends playing it quite a bit when the game was out, but I never really dove into it or played much of it for myself, so the first real time I got to experience the Tales series was with Tales of the Abyss on PS2. Now my buddy Nick, who I'm sure you've seen in a number of videos and we've done podcasts together, and he'll be in a video this week depending on when that goes up, but he was a big Tales fan. He still is a big Tales fan. He was really into this game at the time, and so it looked really cool. I loved just sort of the language, like how they were naming stuff, the names of different towns and just the MacGuffins in the game. Like, oh, they're using really cool language, and I like the voice actors. And of course, immediately the thing that really caught me was the intro song. Now, Tales games always have really, really good intro songs that kind of get you excited for the game, to make you feel like, oh man, this is going to be a really cool adventure. I can't wait to play. And Tales of the Abyss, in my opinion, has one of the best intro songs of any game, let alone a Tales game. And so I can just remember listening to that over and over and over again. It's so good, and just the animated cutscene that goes with it is really excellent. Now, I know this is not a lot of people's favorite because of Luke and how he's kind of whiny at the beginning, but then for those that have played the game know that he goes through quite a change, and the story gets really, really crazy throughout. But what really hooked me on this game was, of course, the combat system. Now, leading up to this, I was a big JRPG fanatic, obviously, but didn't play a whole lot of action RPGs. There were mainly just, you know, the typical turn-based RPGs from the PS1 era, and I didn't really play anything that had action combat, but for this it was like, oh, I was actually excited to get into fights, whereas maybe in the past, you know, you're just wanting to run away from battles, or it's kind of a chore. But with this, it was really fun action combat. You could change the different characters, and then depending on if you found the ring, you could even play with two people, which was kind of welcome because you can't really do that in other JRPGs, and this isn't anything new for Tales games really, but for me it was just sort of like this eye-opening thing where, wow, you can go and, you know, have another friend join in with you during the battles, and especially for boss battles that were a little bit difficult, that was always a fun thing to do. And it was just a really cool world. I loved exploring and checking out all the different things, and it was sort of a interesting kind of take on the typical, you know, here, like, oh, I start off in a town, my hometown's burned down, like, oh, I'm gonna go be a hero. And this guy, he starts off as a prince, and he's very sheltered, they won't let him leave, but then he kind of, you know, eventually gets out there and sees the world for what it is, and it's kind of funny to be that, you know, that fish out of water. I think it's a good way to tell a story, because a lot of times you have to sort of force feed that to people, but if the character himself doesn't know it, then you can kind of relate to him a little bit, because you're like, oh, well, if he doesn't understand it, obviously I don't either, because he has never really left this little area. So I thought that was a cool little twist, and again, I know a lot of people don't like Luke, or that's not one of people's favorites, but I really did enjoy that quite a bit. And I really have to say that this was the game that really started my love for Tales, because again, like I said, I didn't really play the older ones or the ones that came before it. And when this game actually came out in the States, it was, if I remember right, this was sort of a tumultuous time for the Tales series, where they had like Tales of Legendia and all these other like weird games, and we were not getting a few, so it was really nice to get a good one out. And I think this was sort of the tipping point where it was like, are we going to continue to localize these? Is it even worth it? Are people buying enough of these? And I remember they just kept saying that over and over, and I think it really came to a head with Tales of Grace's F on PS3. And I think that was like, okay, if this one doesn't do well, we're really not going to do it. But before that, it really was Tales of the Abyss. And during that time, again, when I was coming back from Korea, kind of rediscovering games, and my friend he was in the middle of playing Tales of the Abyss. He was really into it, and it was just one of those games that really, again, helped me fall in love with games again. I mean, I know I've said there's about, you know, a small handful. This one kind of was later down the road for me, as far as, you know, what it did for me and exactly the impact it had, but it still was definitely one that really helped me want to continue playing JRPGs. I didn't play a lot of PS2 RPGs. I gotta be honest, I played, Dark Cloud and the 2 Final Fantasies and maybe a few scattered others, but that was pretty much it. So it was kind of cool to go back and rediscover these PS2 gems in a way. Although this did come out again later on 3DS, so if you don't have a PS2 and you do have a 3DS, that's definitely one system you can go pick it up for. And if I'm not mistaken, this also had its own anime. I think like going forward, like every other series for Tales had its own anime attached to it, but this is one of the first where I actually remember sitting down and watching some of the fan subbed versions of it. This may have been before the time of Crunchyroll, or before I really understood what Crunchyroll was. And I don't think it's on Crunchyroll even so, and I don't think it's ever got translated into English, but it was kind of funny to be playing through the game and then watch the anime. It's like, oh, this is interesting. It's kind of interesting to kind of pair it up and get a little bit more story through the anime, and it was just great. Again, the action combat really hooked me. The world, just the kind of this world they built was really interesting to me, and the characters were all kind of believable. And I mean, let's all be real here. Who didn't have a crush on Tyr? She's one of the coolest female characters in the Tales series, and really good game in my opinion. One of my favorite Tales games. I would say up until Grace's Death, it was my favorite Tales game, and I would say Tales of Grace's Death is still my favorite Tales, but this is like right behind it, just kind of because of the nostalgia. It's always the first one that you play, and yeah, it just will always be a little bit special to me. And anyways, guys, that was my first Tales game. Let me know what you thought of Tales of the Abyss and the Tales games in general, if you like that series, what you thought of it, what your first Tales game was. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.